think about it as augmented
or staged.
dexterity as opposed to autonomous intelligence.
You go to an event and they got a robot placing an implant and you're like, oh shit, I'm out of work. And the reality of it is that the entire thing is structured in a way where it doesn't make a mistake. You know what I mean?
Humans are still the ones who do the unpredictable stuff.
Yep.
And there's a lot more that's unpredictable out there that we're even thinking about.
AI isn't just changing dentistry, it's completely redefining it. Tune into Bite-Size Podcast, the Dental AI and Tech Podcast, and stay ahead of the curve.
Welcome back to another episode of the Bite-Size Podcast. Everyone assumes the more you rely on AI, the more of yourself you lose. But researchers studied over thousands of people. The ones most integrated with AI were the ones who stayed most themselves, or mostly human. My guest today, Helen Edwards, is a researcher and a keynote speaker whose work sits at the intersection of human performance and artificial intelligence. She leads an institute, along with her spouse, studying how people actually relate to AI tools in professional settings. And her research consistently challenges the loudest claims that are coming out of Silicon Valley, which we will talk about. At a time when most AI conversations in healthcare default to fear or hype, Helen brings something rarer: data, evolutionary context, and a framework for understanding what work actually is before we decide what machines should do with it. So, Helen, welcome to the Bite-Size Podcast. Thanks for coming on. Appreciate you.
Oh, thanks so much. I'm happy to be here.
It's good to have you. I found you on TikTok.
Awesome.
Because I've got this like feed of AI stuff. I'm in the algorithm, right? And your TikToks came up and I'm like, oh, this lady knows what she's talking about. And so I direct messaged you hoping that you would respond, and you did. Thank you. And here we are. So before we jump into like your philosophy and your kind of like your angle on the interaction of humans and AI, I want you to tell us a little bit about how you even landed here. Like, why are you even doing this? What prompted it? You know, just give us a little bit of a backstory on that and what your organization does.
Great. I'd be happy to. So I've had a long career that's been always at this intersection of technology and sort of human psychology. And it's always been very interesting to me how people interact with technology. And I had some very counterintuitive experiences early in my career about human-computer interaction in control systems and control centers in the power grid, and people reacting to being, you know, lots of alarms and what have you. So I got really interested in this sort of technology space and got into AI in about 2012, working with a startup in the Valley. And then in 2016, something really curious happened. My husband and I have 5 kids, and the 2 eldest were getting ready to go to college. And if you remember back to 2016, that was kind of the last time we had this big peak of AI is going to take over all the jobs. And it was a deep learning revolution. That's when Jeff Hinton came out saying, "Could better stop training radiologists." I think Elon said we're going to have self-driving cars within a year or 2 or something like that. I don't remember the exact predictions. But anyway, they're all awful predictions. They're all totally wrong. But when the kids, the 2 eldest, were looking at going to college, they sort of said in a kind of spicy way, like teenagers do, well, what's the point? Robots are going to do all the jobs anyway, so why would we go to college and what would we even study? Yeah. And we realized that over the dinner table, we just didn't really have a good answer. So Dave and I, my co-founder and husband, who has a long heritage in tech, including being a software product manager at Apple and involved in early internet stuff at Morgan Stanley, we really sort of sat down and said, okay, well, let's try and answer this. So we replicated in our own way those BLS and ONET studies that were sort of the thing that you did back then and is now happening again, right? They're called AI exposure studies these days, but they were automation studies back then. And we came up with a particular thesis around the human role in handling unpredictable situations, unpredictability writ large. And we didn't have a complete answer. We had a pretty damn good one, and we got really interested in this whole space. So we formed a market research company that very quickly we ended up selling to Atlantic Media and going and working for courts for a while. And we became just deeply committed to this whole process of what is the relationship between humans and AI? How is that going to change? And then early last year, after our first summit, where we bring all of our sort of key community together, we decided these questions were so big and so important and cut to a philosophical heart of what it means to be human that we converted into a nonprofit. And our goal is to build a research institute that is a modern, agile research institute doing good science, sound science. And we're very early. It's we're fledgling. It's still just the two of us at the moment. We have good, strong partnerships with various academic institutions, including both of us being visiting researchers at UC Berkeley CHI and Stuart Russell's lab that studies, human compatible AI. And we're gradually building this research out, and we're gradually building out a pretty sophisticated sort of set of ideas about what it's going to take to be still human. And remember, humans have always used tools, have always used technology. So we're not anti-AI by any stretch. We're actually really pro AI. It's an amazing technology.
Yeah.
But neither of us are particularly thrilled with the default position for AI's rollout into our culture right now. So we formed this research institute, it's a nonprofit that we have an annual summit, we have a research program that we're building on, and we fund all the research, we fund all our work through keynote speaking about how to think about what's happening to you as a human, what's happening to your teams, and what's happening to the broader communities at large as we incorporate what we think is quite a different technology. Now, that's a big statement. Nobody knows for sure whether this is really different from the past. The economists don't know, technologists don't know, the philosophers don't know, but we're taking the stance that it probably is, and if it is, we want to understand what the role of humans is going to be in this. So that's kind of the short intro to what we do.
There's a lot in there. I have about 50 questions. So, first of all, congrats to raising 5 kids. I raised 4. You got probably a very thick, steely skin at this point in your life.
It's a wonderful blended family, and thankfully they're all sort of, there's 2 the same age, and 1 younger, and they all look after each other, and they're all, great friends. So it's a wonderful, abundant privilege.
That is a great big check mark in the win column. Good job. All right, let me ask you one question that came up from your intro. You said that you have a contrarian position. Those maybe aren't your words, but you have a contrarian position to the way that AI is being rolled out. What do you mean by the rollout of AI and what that message is versus your position? Can you dig a little deeper on that?
When we started in AI, yes, there was this idea of there was the automation studies about machines replacing humans.
Yeah.
And that was a story that was kind of grounded in the economics, grounded in labor economics and discussions. And that there's always been sort of worries about machines taking over from humans. This is not a new thing. There's actually, like, every time there's some sort of recession, there's a worry about this. I think it happened in the Depression, where there's like, you can go back and look at cartoons about machines taking over from humans. So whenever people feel economically fragile, this story comes up again. But this is really different. And the reason this is different, and it goes back to a very particular moment in time, not long after ChatGPT was released, And
That was November of 2022.
2022. Yeah.
Okay.
And one of the VCs put out a chart, one of these, a chart that said that here's SaaS, Salesforce and whatnot. And we're not going to make our money back from AI investments if we just target that. Here's the whole labor market, like whatever trillions. And that's where we're going to make our money back. So the entire story of AI very rapidly became a story of competing with human cognition and replacing humans as a return on investment, as an investment story. Now, it certainly doesn't have to be this way.
Let me ask one question to clarify. So what you're saying is that as these organizations or business leaders who are going to be investing into developing the AI technology, like
and building data centers.
Gemini.
That's the big one, right? Building data
okay.
centers, because that's where
that's
where the real money is buying chips and steel and concrete and water and electricity. The way we're going to get our money back is by putting humans out of work.
So that became the story in order to raise the money to do what they wanted to do. So, so what you're saying is like, hey, we're not just going to build an AI software tool like Salesforce. We're going to, in order for us to justify the investment that we need to get in order to do this, we have to replace the entire human or a significant portion of the human labor force. So that becomes the message. That's what you're saying.
Yeah, bingo. So we did a really back of the envelope calculation a few years ago, straight after that chart came out. And the really back of the envelope back then was that your break even was about a third of the US workforce going
had
away.
To be replaced.
Yeah. And haven't done it since, because those things are, they're back of the envelope. That's, whatever. But that shows you that this is big and it's real. And what got me on TikTok and Instagram, rather than just sort of ticking away quietly in the mountains of Oregon, because I'm kind of an introvert, but what got me to be a little bit more sort of activist and outspoken about this is that I started to worry about a year ago that this narrative was becoming causal, that it was actually starting to drive behavior in a way that was pathological to everything good we like about humans. What is the point of a technology that, if it doesn't make us smarter? What's the point of an artificial intelligence if it just replaces us? And there is nothing that says it has to be this way. This is cultural, this is political, this is about power. But it's also about the way that we all adopt the tools ourselves. And it's about individual choices, and it's about organizational choices. It doesn't have to be, well, I'm just going to sit here and wait for someone to regulate this, because honestly, we're going to be waiting a while. And that's not even the answer. The answer is much more individual. The answer is much more community. So I got on TikTok and Instagram particularly to start talking about how this needs to be and can be a much more nuanced conversation. That if you're listening to two sides of the story, that AI is going to just take over and we're going to live this utopia, or AI is going to take over and we're going to be made extinct, we're not left with any kind of functional conversation. The bottom line is that most people look at that story and they have two responses. They have an intellectual response that's, I don't think I buy that.
Yeah.
Just doesn't feel right. I can think of lots of reasons why that's not going to be the case. And one of them is because it's never been like that in the past. And there's always this question, well, maybe it is different. So that's part of the story that we talk about. But the other one is a story about how you feel about that. And I think a lot of people, for very good reasons, look at that story and go, I don't like that story. I don't want to not have a job. I want a really good job. I want a better job. I want more agency, and I want more personal growth, and I want to be connected with others. I want to be human, but I don't want someone else to just decide that I should go sit on the beach or be an aristocrat, whatever those things are, or, take up knitting. I'm not being disparaging to knitters by any step.
Yeah, my daughter's a knitter,
knitting is
so
wonderful.
Be careful.
Yeah, no, my sister-in-law, my daughter, knitting is wonderful. I can't knit. I'd love to be able to knit, but I spend too much time talking about AI to knit. But you see what I'm getting at here is that I think that we need a much more functional conversation in the middle where individuals can see that this is a narrative, it is a story, it is a cultural dynamic now.
That's driving the whole industry.
Yeah, and we can change it. We can all change it by having better conversations. These all good movements start with a grassroots, family level, friends level, co-worker level discussion. And one of the things that's really interesting about AI, and we'll come to this, I'm sure, later in the discussion, but one of the things that's very interesting about AI, the fact that it does touch on this issue of jobs, which then goes to identity, which then goes to, meaning quite quickly, is that professional associations and professional groups are actually one of the very important places where these conversations need to happen. Because
why do you say that?
Part of how you stay grounded in your own authorship and your own sovereignty is accountability and showing up for others. And professional standards are one of the places that is a very functional place to have these conversations. So joint accountability and joint sovereignty is a really important driver that we haven't necessarily seen in other. We've seen it in other social movements. People have, they obviously form all sorts of groups, but we already have the ones we need. These professional associations are really powerful places. And, podcasts like yours where people of the same, they've got practices that form their identity as healthcare providers. These forums are where you can start having these really good conversations.
So to kind of just put a little bit of a bow on this narrative that's being driven, I just want to clearly state this and maybe ask a follow-up question. So basically what you're saying is the news outlets and the media, which are unfortunately, most of them are driven by, sponsors and donors and cash, are being driven by the corporations that have to drive a narrative that substantiates more investment coming in order to keep the companies going. So it's not necessarily that these narratives are true, right? It's just that it's the narrative that makes the engine run in order to find the capital. Is that fair to
I didn't
say?
say anything about media per se, because the media I think it's not really. There's a red herring in this. It's really where is this coming from? A handful of VCs. It's essentially
handful of VCs. Okay.
Yeah, and amplified through the investment channels through the big tech platforms. And different leaders say different things and have different angles on it. But you got to go back to the sort of core idea, which was in one particular slide about, and I think the title of the slide was "VCs are saying the quiet part out loud," which is
this is the article you're referencing that kind of
the slide, you can Google
landed.
it, it's everywhere. VCs are saying the quiet part out loud, and then you can actually you can eyeball this chart, and in many ways that's the patient zero, if you like.
Got it. Okay. So your claim here is that this is far more nuanced of a transition, or because this inflection point between human work and AI. It's far more nuanced and needs to be managed not at a global media powerhouse / VC company driving the narrative that they need to drive in order to keep funding coming through, but it needs to be handled in conversations like this, in small team environments, to really understand how AI can help. So that's fair. I'm on point there.
So it's fair because what you're suggesting too is that once you get to this kind of level of narrative, it becomes all wrapped up in sort of a story of inevitability, and people.
There's a lot of fear. They're fearful.
They don't feel like they have any agency. They lose hope. And I'm in the business of hope. And that's not hope as in, I'm just going to cross my fingers and hope. It's hope as an act of rebellion. It's the way that we think about hope as it doesn't have to be this way. And why isn't it? Well, there's tons of evidence why it's not this way, which is where I sort of started on TikTok.
So I think in our previous conversations and preparing for this, I think a claim that you had, you tell me if I'm on point with this, but the claim was basically that the fear of AI replacing human labor is, we wanted to identify where that message is coming from. And your claim is coming from basically VC capital money and a messaging that supports that. But it's not grounded in research. That message is not necessarily grounded in research.
It's
is that a fair claim?
It's more complex than that. And so there are many different ways that you can apply technology to labor. You can fully automate, or you can fully augment. And the history of technology and labor is one where sometimes technology does completely replace a human. Sometimes it does. We don't really have elevator operators. We certainly don't have people walking around lighting gas lights for street lights, right? Yeah. So those are really clear-cut cases. We have the closest we have to that in the current situation is language translation. There's good evidence that language translation as a job has really been completely, almost completely replaced. Now, I'll caveat that with language interpretation is still really important. We still need a human to make a context relevant, situated interpretation of language. So that could be, I've just finished a wonderful book translated from Japanese. That's going to be done by a human for quite a long time. A fiction book that's very sort of emotional and meaningful and has a lot of nuance will need a human mind on it. But translating a fax from Japanese to English, an email.
Piece of cake.
So, just a transactional email. So that is one place where we see that. But doing that in one place, replacing the elevator operators and replacing the language translators is not the same as replacing a doctor or a dentist or a radiologist or a teacher or a nurse or a strategist or a data analyst. Every single one of these roles is situated in a context with many, many tasks. And there's a long history of labor economics about the way that technology changes these jobs. Sometimes it can pull them apart, and it depends, and how it pulls them apart depends on how strongly bundled those tasks are versus how weakly bundled those tasks are. It depends on whether the expertise that's been automated is really the core of the human expert, or whether it's just automating the pieces, the transactional pieces around the core of that expertise. And I've done videos on each of those. There's one thing that's very important around labor economics that I think is kind of like the 101 of labor economics, which is that in general, as tasks in a chain get automated, it's complementary. If you automate one, it creates a scarcity on the others. And if it's a complement to those others, the value of those complements rises. So this is a long-standing piece of labor economics that's well understood about the value of complements. And one of the big questions in my mind is, does that still hold? If so, how? And what do we see in the labor market as we start to see tasks, individual tasks, being automated in ways that never have been before? How does it create value in the complementary tasks? So, for example, in your context, in healthcare. There's tasks that a healthcare provider does, writing notes, treating a patient, viewing a patient, providing a diagnosis, weighing a judgment, making a clinical decision about that particular patient in that particular context.
Right.
The actual process of taking an X-ray and reading the X-ray, easy to automate, right?
Right.
It's
right.
reading that.
It's already
reading
being
that,
done in dentistry.
It's done.
Big time.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of a done deal. So it's a little bit like talking about, pressing the button on the elevator. But the process then of assessing what that actually means and what the different clinical treatment paths and options are, the various risk returns, that place is clearly augmentable by machines, right? You get that clinician can use AI to explore those in a little bit of a different way,
Right.
and then to communicate with the patient. The actual final judgment and how that gets translated into a set of clinical options with a particular recommendation, that's still a very human thing. And that value has now got enhanced because, and here's the thing that's really important, there's more judgments that come because more options were available. So more judgment and more actions are possible. Now, when more judgment and more actions are possible, the original people who talked about this in terms of AI are out of the University of Toronto, but they talk about how that is the cream and sugar, if you like, of AI, because cream and sugar, when coffee gets cheap, more people drink coffee, so the value of cream and sugar goes up. So as certain tasks get cheaper, certain prediction tasks like predicting there's a hole in that tooth from an X-ray, as those predictions get cheaper, you can make more of them. But as you make more of them, you need to make more judgments and you need to take more actions. Gotcha. Because you can take more actions, you've got more judgments to make. And so this ecosystem expands, and that's the core of complements, that the value of action and judgment gets higher. You want more of them, there's more to do, and the human that does them is more valuable.
There's a perfect example of this. So there's a few companies in the dental industry that they've got AI analyzing X-rays. Okay, data behind it's pretty strong that AI can recognize caries and disease much more efficiently than just a human eye on an X-ray. And it's pretty significant how much it can find. So one of these companies named Pearl, hellopearl.com is the website. Great company, awesome company. I know a lot of the people that work there. And they say that they went to market initially, and I might be off a little bit on this, so I apologize to Pearl if I say this incorrectly, but their initial marketing strategy was, get AI to do all of your analysis of an X-ray. That got rejected pretty quickly in the industry because, number one, it undercut the value of the clinician looking at the X-ray. So they shifted their messaging to it being a second opinion. Okay, it's a second opinion. But with that said, when to your point, when an AI that's trained on millions and millions and millions of data points and tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of X-rays, starts recognizing more caries, it's more work to do, right? Sure. It's another tooth you have to fix. So
think of all those teeth out there that need to be fixed and can't be fixed right now for whether it's cost or whether it's access or whether it's the fact that no one read that X-ray. There's so much more that we can do that we don't even do.
Right.
There's
exactly.
so much low-hanging fruit.
So in your language and using your adjectives and so forth, because you're saying this so precise that I've tried to match your descriptions, but basically the AI is now doing a job, but because it's doing that job well, the output is increased in terms of additional work that's needed. Is
Yeah.
that
Yeah, and
that
we're
a
seeing
layman's
it. We
term
see
way
it
to say
everywhere. Yeah, we see it absolutely everywhere. And we see it with the explosion of people building their own agents. I
Yep.
know people that literally go to sleep every night having kicked off another task for their, I don't know, 1,000 agents. Like,
Yeah.
honestly, insane. And they wake up in the morning and the first thing they do is like, what has my agent done overnight? And this is that's real. Now, does it mean it's any good? Well, we don't know. It's early. Sometimes it's going to be good. Sometimes it's not. We see the whole vibe coding world. Vibe coding is really fascinating because what vibe coding does is just sort of collapse what's economical to do now that never was.
Explain vibe coding really quick. Just explain
So
what it is.
vibe coding basically means that the term was coined a couple of years ago by one of the kind of key AI researchers. And what he basically meant was, I can sit down on my computer and I can say to a language model, build me an app that does X, Y, Z. So you essentially can communicate with a coding tool through a language interface. You don't need to know how to code anymore. You can just say what you want, and bang, magically this code gets written for you and appears. Now, it's really exciting. It's super exciting, right? There's a deep reality behind vibe coding that a lot of people are still kind of wrapping their heads around in terms of labor economics, because what it does is enable kind of anyone who's an expert on the front line. It's the flip side of automating expertise, because if you're an expert on the front line and you really understand a problem really well, you can now build a technology tool to help you solve that problem in a way that you could never have before. So we run an event every year. Our event has some very particular ways that we like to onboard our speakers, that we like to treat our community, that we like to hand off certain things, that we want to see certain we want to welcome people in certain ways and manage the process in certain ways. There is no event management tool out there on the market that can help us with that. Like, we've been pulling our hair out about this. And when you go and think about what it would cost to build, it'd be $250,000. My husband Dave has vibe coded that over the last few weeks, and we now have an event management system that looks and feels cool, and it's just for us. That was not possible before. So when people say
2 years ago, you couldn't do it.
No, couldn't do it. So people are, the stock market's worried about this. This is why, the SaaS companies have all taken a big hit, because the argument is that will take away SaaS, like Salesforce and whatnot.
Salesforce.
Yeah.
Right.
So let me be clear. I don't think it's going to take away anything like Salesforce, because that's all about the data they already have of you. It's not going to take it away overnight. There is so much value in those big, robust platforms, because that's where all your data is. That's where all your workflow is. That's not going to be replaced overnight. But is it going to mean that if you're a little dev shop making little things for local businesses, do you have to worry? Hell yeah. Because now a small business owner generally doesn't have time to sit down and vibe code. But they're getting there as these tools get better, as you have more automation into deployment, because production of these things is actually still kind of chunky and kind of clunky and hard, and there's lots of gotchas and whatnot. But this is really going to change the way that organizations, if you're a leader in an organization and you're thinking, what problems can I solve that I've never been able to solve before? Your first place is, where did I want my software support systems, my ERP, my customer relationship management system? What did I want it to do that was never economical to do before that I can now do? That's like a number one question. So these are very real, and that this is going to change the labor market significantly. Is it going to make all jobs go away? No, definitely not. It's going to shift them. It's going to change them. It's definitely going to create, I think, a new class of entrepreneurs. Lots of people who can see lots of different problems that are problems for them that they can maybe solve for other people now that they could never do before.
I want to just hammer down on one more. I might press a little bit on this. I think I want to go back to. Thank you. That's a very. You wrap that up pretty nice. I want to go back to the. I don't know if it's a claim, but this whole idea that people are going to lose their jobs, and a lot of people are going to lose their jobs. Okay. I don't think you're saying that not a lot of people are going to lose jobs. I think there are some industries that will be leveled. It's just going to happen.
But it's not necessarily that people are like, you're out of work. It's a more subtle process most of the time. It's more like a squeeze. It's a squeeze where, it used to be a team of 10 and now it goes down to a team of 3.
Okay.
That's going to happen. And that's happened a lot. The other place that it happens is where, and this is what's happening in the creative industries at the moment, and it's real tough, really hard, is that, and I did a video on this around it's called saturation, where as this cost comes down for AI generated content that replaces human content, and it's just good enough, it's just good enough. And so what happens is that the wages collapse, but the demand saturates. There's only so many illustrations you can have. There's only so many videos you can have. There's only so many whatevers you can have. And we're seeing this in the creative industry, and we call it a squeeze, slop to squeeze. And so there's a chunk of it that's pure slop. And, if
there's
you
a
look
lot
at
of that right now.
Yeah. And you look at ads for, when you're on online and there's an ad for drivers in Oregon over 55 need to take notice of this, your insurance, all of those overnight, those are all just AI generated now. That used to be a person. We didn't care about it then. We don't care about it now. But nevertheless, that person doesn't have their job anymore.
Right.
And so what we see is in the creative industries, this is very much alive and well. The squeeze is happening. So individual creators are having a situation where what used to fill their workday has now been fractionalized into smaller and smaller chunks, more work, less depth, less money, and they still have all the business development overhead to get more stuff. So that's not a nice place to be. That's painful. That's painful. And it's painful to see it in the creative industries because there is a lot of all of us out in the world who are consumers of this content being actually okay with it being not human generated. Like, it's fine. Who cares?
I have an actual really great example of this that I think hits. I'm really good friends with a guy named Jordan. He runs a company called Boom Cloud. It's a dental membership plan. He was an artist growing up and plays guitar and sings and that kind of stuff. Well, as soon as the AI music generation tools popped up a couple of years ago, like he uses Suno.ai and a couple other things, he started making music. I think he's done thousands of songs now that he's uploaded to Spotify, and he's actually making pretty good money now from, sponsorship or, however I don't know how the monetization model is set up. But people think he's a real person. Like they send him messages saying, dude, you have the most amazing voice, blah, 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 blah. And he's just pumping out thousands of these songs. Well, come to find out, he tells me, this has been a few months ago, Spotify, as the company, has an army of AI music creation people, and they're just dumping hundreds of thousands, I don't know how many, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of songs into Spotify that are built by their own company in order to not have to pay royalties on the music, right? So we get and I don't know. I mean, you've probably listened to some of the AI generated music. It's actually really freaking good. Like some of it's really
there's
good.
There's a reason it's good. And at our summit last year, we had a wonderful creative person who's also an AI person. She ran a nonprofit in AI for a long time. Her name is Tess Posner. I'm actually doing an Instagram live with her next week. Yeah, if anyone wants to chime in. She ran an experiment at our summit where she took one of her actual songs and she created a similar kind of AI generated song, right?
Okay.
And she didn't tell the audience, she didn't tell our group which was which.
Which
People
was
had
what?
to choose. Yeah, they had to choose which one they preferred. And this is not surprising to me because it goes across all modalities. If you don't tell people which it is, they often prefer the AI. More often than not, they'll prefer the AI version and not the human version. And I think there's a lot of testing that we still need to do on this, but part of the reason is because of its familiarity. It's unchallenging, especially in music. You listen to some sort of new style and it's like, well, I really got to get used to that because our brains are predictive processes and it feels good when we know the way the song's going to go. It's very comforting. And that's why people like to read the same kind of book all the time, or why they end up getting into filter bubbles, because you cannot ever underestimate how much people will want to have their own views and worldview and their taste reinforced. And I think that's what AI music particularly is doing. It's a particular mode, a particular medium where the familiar lights us up.
Is likable. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's instantly likable. And I think that, we're going to see it in it. You think of the places where it's really going to be a winner for people. It's just make me a playlist exactly like my old running playlist, but just a little bit different. That'll be a place where people don't want to apply any particular creativity. They just want to tweak on the style that they know is motivating to them when they exercise. And that's a place where AI music, I think, will really win. I mean, I think I saw that some country artist has been like number 3 in Spotify, and it's not real. Now, the thing is that if you break the spell and you tell people that it's not human creative, that it's a full AI generated thing, that's when they decide they don't like it. Now, interestingly enough, if you do that to an AI, it will say the same thing. An AI will prefer AI generated content until you tell the AI that it's AI generated content. And then it says, "Oh no, I don't like that. I like the human generated content," which I find is fabulous, because it either says AI is just mimicking again, or maybe the AI is saying, "Oh no, feed me new stuff because I can't grow and I can't learn if I don't have novelty."
Right.
But that's just me speculating.
That's awesome. Okay. So I want to transition into something that we talked about in preparing for this, which was you have a claim that AI integration, or integrating AI into our lives, actually it strengthens human identity rather than, what's the word I'm looking for?
It can make us more human.
Or destroys it.
Right? Yeah, it can make us more human.
Can you go into that a little bit?
Okay. So the way this works, and this is, remember that we're coming from the perspective of cognitive science, design, and AI research and human-computer interaction. And we're saying one of the most important questions that we need to understand is this technology different than anything we've had in the past? We've always outsourced our cognition. What do you do if you don't have this, right? You and the questions that you sent through to me, the dentist holding the tool, the tool is the dentist is the tool, right? We've always had these boundaries with tools.
It is an extension of our body.
It's an extension of our body, extension of our mind. The difference is with AI is that it is a true cognitive technology. It this doesn't really remember who I am in the same way, not on its own. The horrible thing that scrapes across my teeth doesn't actually
Don't
understand.
say horrible, say the wonderful thing that
that keeps my teeth white and clean, and like I always get a good bill of health from my dentist.
There you go. Thank you.
That tool does not actually have any sense of who that dentist is, right? So, but AI is doing this, and especially as these memory systems build out. When I can't imagine life without the memory in my AI tools. No, it's just it's changed everything.
It's necessary.
So
it's absolutely necessary.
We've studied thousands of people over hundreds of hours, and we've worked with our own advisors to critique and push and pull on this. And what we find in this is there's 3 ways that AI changes us and changes our thinking.
Okay.
The first one is blending, where we blend our reasoning with AI in ways that become a more amplified version of what kind of blending we already have. We already have distributed cognition across all of humanity. We get our ideas from our community. But with AI, when we blend our ideas and they really permeate into ours to the point that we can't tell the difference, it's a really different situation. The second one is what we call bonding, which is where your identity bonds with the tool and vice versa. It's where you can't imagine you imagine yourself as a different identity, especially professionally, that you can and we see this in negative ways. We see this as well, if you take the AI off me, I'll go and get another job. I can't possibly function without this.
Okay.
And the third one is bending, which is where your meaning making and sense making frameworks become much more flexible when you use AI. And you're able to go into quite different learning states, into quite different professional states. And this bending piece has a causal function. It actually starts to moderate the way the other 2 work. So if you can imagine in a kind of 2x2 management speaky kind of way, that those 3 can be in a high and low position, and you can position them in 3 dimensions. So you've got a cube, right? You've got a cube and that at the bottom left of that cube, you're low on everything. You're putting AI into the role of a doer. It just does stuff for you. It's not changing you. You can be faster. You're able to, send AI to do stuff for you. You can go and do
blending.
Other things.
This is the blending example.
That's where everything's kind of low, and you're really just outsourcing everything to the AI, and you're going and doing something else, right? It's very transactional. It's a good foundation. It allows you to really exploit what you already know, but you're not going to change. You're not going to learn, and if you do that too much, you run the risk of atrophying the skills that you already had. So if you do that so that a whole bunch of emails that you write get sent, who cares? Just automated sending. If you write every single email anymore like that, then you're going to lose how you write emails. You're going to forget how to write emails. That skill will atrophy. Right. But if you then imagine moving to the top right of the cube, so you're high on all of the other dimensions. You're high on your bonding, you're high on your blending, and you're high on your bending. Then what you're in there is you're using AI as a co-author, and you're really using it to change your thinking. Your identity has started to shift with that AI. You've started to feel like you are something else, and you're able to do more. You're able to be much more flexible in what you think is meaningful. So, for example, and we see this a lot with coders, like with developers. They didn't think they were able to, like with people that say you take someone who, a marketing person, this is quite common, a marketing person who sort of thought of themselves as like, I'm the people side of marketing, I'm not the data side of marketing. I don't know anything about marketing tech. But they realize that one of the things that has constrained their career is they'd not really got their hands dirty on things like sentiment analysis or the big customer data stuff. And they say, well, I tell you what, I'm going to start using AI to go into that place. I'm going to start using AI to move into more of a partner position. So where I'm having the AI take me to a place where I can do some data analysis in a way that I've never done before that's meaningful to me. And then you start to see, oh, I'm not just a people marketing person with the insights. Oh, I'm actually like a bit more of a marketing tech person now. I can see myself doing that. And then they start creating meaning out of that data. They start interrogating, they start understanding it. They're going to get different insights than the pure market analysis, data scientist view, because they just have a different schema in their mind for what's meaningful. So they're going to ask different questions. And that's a real growth place to be. If you do that well, you can use AI to really extend who you can be. And part of our whole shtick is to get people to see the differences between these different roles, to understand that that's a choice that we make, to understand that those are things that should be available to us. We shouldn't be constrained from those. But the flip side is we have to be really accountable to other humans for how we show up when we've started to do that. We see people in the research who go too far into that without recognizing that they kind of have to poke their head up and check whether they're still making sense. Because if you go too far with that pattern and you don't check in with other humans, you can literally think that you've come up with like a new scientific theory when you know absolutely nothing. So that stepping into like what it means to be human is to use the tools for this, but then to go back to your professional associations, to your marriage, to your kids, to your co-workers, to your community and say, what do you people think of this?
Right.
Is a very simple way of describing that. So what we do is we get through this process of trying to understand where people are using AI, what kind of roles they're putting AI into, how it's changing them on those 3 dimensions, bonding, blending, bending. And then we say, this is about authorship. This is about how you stay the author of your own mind. How do you keep your own cognitive sovereignty? And with that, there's 3 basic things to remember, and they all move in lockstep. The first is that you've got to have awareness. You've got to actually kind of understand that this is the way you're using the tool. Can you name it? Can you describe an idea when you don't have access to the tool that the idea gave you? Which parts of this do you care about? You know, what do you want? What do you not care about doing anymore? For example, I literally don't care about crafting an email to someone who has annoyed me. I will always get AI to do that.
That's why you haven't responded to my emails.
Oh, no, that's not true. I always respond to your email. But like I get AI to do that first cut because I'm bad at it. I can react too strongly. So I'll get the AI to say, calm me down, help me with my 3 deep breaths, you know. And so I've literally consciously said that is a skill I'm happy to just let go away. But conversely, I'm not happy to have these other skills. Like I really want my voice in most emails. I mean, most emails don't annoy me, right? So awareness. The second one is agency, having a choice. Like what choices are you making? Sometimes you won't have a choice. Some employers say you have to use AI. Some employers say you're not allowed to use AI.
Right.
The third one is accountability, showing up for other people and explaining yourself and allowing them to know how you use this tool. And those 3 things are kind of our hypothesis about where we need to bring our individual minds, but also the collective norms of how we talk to each other about what this technology means to us.
So approaching it from the 3 Bs, blending, bonding, bending.
Yep.
Understanding where you're at on this rubric and how you're using AI helps the individual to understand how they need to inform and interact with their coworkers or people or family or whoever it might be helps them understand how to keep them in check, so to speak.
Yeah.
Is that
yeah.
fair?
Where you might be, one of the things that people do is like use it as a way of knowing whether they are under or over relying on AI. Like, are they under trusting it? Are they over trusting it? So, for example, if you use AI in a way where you're getting lots of different new ways to see an existing problem, like, give me 10 different ways that I could think about this problem. Every
Okay.
single one of those 10 ways is a frame. It's a new frame on the problem. Now, our minds are tuned for novelty. So we'll instantly look at those 10 and we'll pass them, right? We're discriminators. We'll look at them and we'll go,
Okay.
oh, 1 and 2, I really like those. 3, the other ones I don't care. Now, it's a classic that's just well-known sort of way that we look at this information.
But we have some like bias towards a new idea.
A
so
new
of those
idea.
10 ideas, the 7th idea might be the most efficient in relationship to the team
exactly,
that you're on or
but
whatever.
because
but
it's
we go
not,
with okay.
Yeah, we go with the new one. Exactly, you're right onto it. So that's a caution, right? If you're using AI in the role of a framer, be careful that you don't mistake the best frame for the novel frame.
The best frame for yeah.
Yeah. So
Gotcha.
we tend to we help people see that that's very different than saying, give me 10 new ideas for a cookie. That's a different process, right? That creative one, give me 10 new ideas for a cookie, you're going to get, and we've run this experiment so many times, you get ridiculous ideas for cookies.
Yeah.
Ridiculous. We got all these cookies that were, because the brief was, it has to be sustainable cookie. So AI tells us that a sustainable cookie is one that's made with recycled coffee grounds and thinks that's a good idea. Now, no human in their right mind would look at that and say, that's a tasty cookie.
Yeah.
So you're doing a different discrimination at that point. You're discriminating based on your aesthetic judgment in the context of your experience and in the context of the broader world. You're not necessarily solving for either novelty or efficiency.
That makes sense. Can you give me one quick example? I mean, you used the example of responding to emails as kind of like a low blend bond bending kind of activity.
Well, it can be, but it can be like really a place where it's only human, or it can be a place where you really want to have an AI really help you fine tune a particular point, because you know that people are skim reading it, and you want to craft that email so that when they skim read it, they skim read the point that you want them to skim read. They grab the one point. So the way that you would use AI in that sense is targeted at a very particular thing that you're fine tuning and controlling.
If you were way high, use the email example, managing your email inbox or whatever. If you're really, really high in the rubric, high on bend, bond, and blend, what does that look like? Like, give me an example of somebody who's really high on that in response to maybe email, or if you got a different example.
The best examples of the co-author role are people who are trying to create a legitimately new space, a design space that they can explore. In this case, it's on their own because these tools don't really help collaboration. But a good example is, one of the examples is how I was able to do a lot of this research.
Okay.
After many years of being very hands-on with many, many people. The first tranche of research was over 1,000 people, over hundreds of hours in workshops, highly observational, pattern recognition research. I had a certain level of background in decision science, cog science, and organizational psychology. It's pretty sort of self-trained expertise over time. I've been, I'm a lot older than I look. I had a long career doing a lot of leadership and running a lot of workshops. But I had to put some structure around this that was grounded in scholarship that I didn't necessarily, like I didn't have any formal qualifications in.
Right.
And so, and I wanted to move into this space, right? I have a personal and career target of really building this research credibility. And so what I had to do was to do this research in such a way that I could write a paper that could be peer reviewed by our reviewers that made sense to them when they came from such a multidisciplinary area. Designers, marketers, cognitive scientists, psychologists, AI researchers, computer scientists. Just we had like 20 people review this paper.
Yeah.
And what it took to use AI as being a co-author was a lot of humility about where I was, but a lot of conscious reasoning about what I was taking from the AI versus what I was not, where I was going as a researcher in terms of my sense of identity, but in terms of the bending, where I could take the theory to test. And with a language model that's read everything that's ever been digitized and put on the internet, it knows an enormous amount about all these fields. And one of the things that these language models do, all AI does, all generative AI does incredibly well, is what we would call combinatorial creativity and combinatorial search. So it can pull things from very, very different places and put them together in contextually meaningful ways. Now,
Right.
when you use AI as a co-author in a really good way, you're able to build your capabilities in lockstep. So you've got your humans, you've got your AI, and you've got yourself, and you're building it as a really learning generative process where you actually change. You know, you become a different person through this process. Obviously, where people are really cut off and they get into these AI delusions, that's a really bad case of that, right? They disconnect themselves from the world and they allow the AI to take them down a rabbit hole that is extremely dangerous. And there are tragic cases of that. But I think it's happening just all the time and more, in ways we don't see and in ways that no one's really talking about. The number of people I talk to who literally say, my husband used to talk to me about those things, but I don't think he does anymore. I think it's ChatGPT. You know, these are changing our patterns of behavior. They're changing our social networks. They're changing everything about the way that we live. And even if you don't use AI, someone else using AI is going through that process.
Right. I really appreciate this. I mean, you've done so much research on this and understanding, frankly, the psychology of the human being kind of interacting with AI, and to take because the media that we see is just so outlandish and terrifying, frankly.
Mhm.
But when you really start digging down and you're looking at the applicability of AI in an individual's life and trying to analyze this, like using your rubric that you've mentioned, your 3 Bs, and helping an individual understand how they're using it, whether it's low or high on these different scales, really humanizes the whole process. And it's not terrifying. It's understanding that puts the individual in a place of authority and kind of a safe space and understanding really what's happening, right? So it's
I think
not
it's really
about
empowering.
it's super empowering.
Yeah.
Super empowering. I kind of, I mean, the summit that you do every year, I mean, is the summit, I mean, I know, do you do any online training as well, or do you just do the summit?
We do a lot of different things. So we do online training all the time. That's often quite bespoke. You know, we'll construct something based off of this research for a particular context because everyone's needs are slightly different. And we do in-person workshops as well, but they're all kind of based in the general vibe of what we've been talking about. How to
Yeah.
how to build this essentially kind of community of human machines. How do you build machine employees? How do you have a culture? How do you think about
Right.
the way that you even talk about this stuff? What are the shared norms? What are the conversations that you need to have? What are the
Right.
ways that you present AI generated work so that other people aren't either repulsed, tune out, or take it and run with it? You know, those kinds
Right.
of simple things, right through to quite sophisticated discussions about what this is going to mean for creating a vision of a future that is actually about that constructs the human role how you want the human role to be. We have
Right.
we have something that's really fun that we call the inside view, where we gather information usually just through interviews with a bunch of
Okay.
people in an organization, and we reflect back to them where they're at on this rubric and what
Got
that's
it.
doing to their organization, and how they can go from the bottom of the cube where they're exploiting what they already know and they're focused on efficiency, to the top of the cube where they're exploring and innovating and growing. And so
Got it.
we're helping people with that journey, because part of this replacement narrative that we didn't talk about is the replacement narrative is 100% efficiency narrative, right? It's all
Right.
about let's just do what we do now faster. That has a ceiling. Efficiency has a ceiling. But capability in the top right of the cube, there's no ceiling on capability. There's absolutely no
Right.
ceiling. We can literally, that's why we're going to Mars, right? That's
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
there is no ceiling on capability. We can literally keep exploring, growing new things. We can solve new problems. We can fix every hole in every tooth in the planet. That kind of
Right.
idea.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's a fun thing for organizations, because they get to see that they can control this narrative. At the moment, if you're a leader, it's really tough, because you're looking at it going, I don't believe this binary, we're going to go extinct or we're
Yeah.
going to be utopia on the beach. I don't believe it, because it doesn't make sense to me, because how can it possibly be the case that there's going to be money for an economy when everyone's out of work and it just makes no sense. And
Yeah.
so people are sort of struggling with, well, what is the vision? How can I have a vision? And
Yeah.
there's a couple of reasons why it's very hard to come up with this vision. And you probably don't have time to go into those, but I'll be doing some videos and whatnot in the next few weeks on technically why it's really hard to have a vision right now. And what we do is we help people just almost like these handholds out of a canyon. We can
Mhm.
climb out of this canyon. It is not the place that we have to live in. There are handholds about the way that labor markets work, about what humans want, about what humans mean to each other, that we actually really understand a lot about. And once you start to see this flywheel of, wow, this can be better, doesn't have to be like a restraining replacement efficiency narrative. This can be about true personal growth, about growth and change in our societies. It can be about solutions. We just don't have enough of those conversations. Now, our summit is 100% focused on that. It's always
Okay.
about the kind of frontier of that thinking. Last year's was very grounded in evolution. Where is agents and diverse intelligences going to take the human intelligence? This
Right.
year, it's about unknowing. We don't know what will be uniquely human versus able to be done by a machine. We just don't know. But we're going to start in this place of unknowing, and we're bringing in psychologists, cognitive scientists, photographers, musicians, other creators, builders of AI technology, researchers of AI technology, and we'll be and designers, because that's our kind of core group. We'll be bringing these people in and saying, let's explore what it means to design from a place of unknowing, to build from a place of unknowing. And it's always really exciting to have these very intense, they're retreats, right? And we kind of run retreats, and you come out of it changed. You have a totally different perception and conception of what's possible. So it's very hopeful in that sense. We're not stuck in a bad narrative.
Can you tell me when your summit is, where it's going to be held, and then also the best way for people to get updates? Do you have an email newsletter or something that you send out
We
to
do.
let people know
We
what's
do.
going on?
So it's the 22nd to the 24th of October, and it starts at 5 p.m. on the Thursday night and runs through till 9 p.m. on the Saturday night. We have all lunches and dinners together, and it's very, it's immersive. It's in Bend, Oregon. We have it at a beautiful venue that's right on the edge of the national forest. So there's a lot of time to sort of breathe and go for a walk with people that you want to learn more about and want to be friends with.
Yeah.
So there's very community gathering. You can find us through obviously all so we have YouTube, LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok, and we have a newsletter that you subscribe to, which is where we do all of our kind of core thinking and the research is published. So that's the kind of main thing. There's the main place to find us.
I will put all the links to your website, your social media accounts, and your newsletter sign up in the description so that people can follow. I could keep going, but we've already gone over. So
I did want to come back though to one question when we had a prep question, and I wanted to come back to it because I think it's important for your audience. All the conversation that we've had up until now has been about like generative AI as language models and image models and whatnot. There's a very important set of things happening in the world of robotics right now. And in healthcare, robotics is obviously like a kind of a big deal. And I just want to sort of like convey something about the conversation that we had when we were doing the prep call, which is the kind of mental model to have in your mind about robotics as you consider this issue of, are we replacing humans or are we augmenting humans? And I think that that's really, we're kind of at a bit of a peak hype moment at the moment with robotics. We've been through these before and we're going through another one. And there's a couple of key things that are important to sort of internalize about robotics, particularly in healthcare, because there's some pretty whizzy demos out there right now. Yeah. Right. And the way I think about robotics right now,
like placing an implant and stuff like that.
Yep. And they're pretty compelling. And if you're worried about your job, then you're going to look at them. Now, what happens when you see these demonstrations? As a human, you look at them, and all you see is agential behavior. And you look at them and you go, wow, there's an intelligent creature, and it's really agential, and we're really, really biased to seeing movement as aliveness. So we smuggle in all of these assumptions. What we don't look for is it's all about looking at AI slop and trying to recognize whether there's six fingers. I know that doesn't happen anymore, but we can see that some stuff is AI slop, right? There's horrible stuff about the war and what have you, and we know that that's not true, or like a grizzly bear grabbing a child. Those kinds of there's a lot of AI slop right now, and we sort of know it's slop, but we can't not look at it. When it comes to robotics, we're kind of in that moment right now where we don't yet recognize where something has been carefully staged and controlled, so that you perceive this degree of intelligence and autonomy that we just hardwired to see that. So what's often happening these are all very staged and controlled. Robotics still remains quite staged and controlled, not as much as it was, but it's still there. It's about precise mathematical behaviors and whatnot. So in a healthcare, and I'm talking about the healthcare environment right now, that we still don't see that. We don't know what to look for, that it's actually
to see
augmented.
If it's augmented.
Think about it as augmented dexterity as opposed to autonomous intelligence. The big thing that's changing, and this is why people say that China is the future of robotics. The big thing that's changing is that there's almost this like kind of national effort to datafy all these dexterous, unpredictable, random movements in the world by getting essentially, armies of people to be the data gatherers. We don't have that here. And so
Got
that
it.
the the data on this is really changing rapidly. So I would think about this as being kind of where self-driving cars were in like 2016, and where it's highly controlled environments, and wow, the technology is changing fast. And there's a story that this is about full autonomy and replacement. But if you look at where we're at now, it's 10 years later, wow, self-driving cars are amazing. If you've ever been in a Waymo, wow, incredible stuff. But it's not really about full autonomy. There's still this human behind the scenes.
Right.
And it took all that time for the data to be gathered. So
Got it.
that's just not commenting on any particular thing, but that's just the mental model to have for robotics right now, is that look for augmented dexterity as opposed to autonomous intelligence.
Yeah, you go to an event and they got a robot placing an implant and you're like, oh shit, I'm out of work. And the reality of it is that the entire thing is structured in a way where it doesn't make a mistake. You know what I mean?
Go back to the original thing we said right at the start of this podcast. Humans are still the ones who do the unpredictable stuff.
Yep.
And there's a lot more that's unpredictable out there that we're even thinking about.
Well, I appreciate you bringing up that point, because we did talk about that and we never really got around to it. I know there's a little bit of fear. I've heard it come up in some conversations about, robots in the dental practice, and what does that mean? And I mean, I've had conversations with other people, even some podcasts like this, about, are you going to walk into a dental practice and there's a robot at the front and they walk you to the back and a robot does all your, it's like, this sounds so freaking ridiculous, but it's in the zeitgeist of the human conscience. I mean, people are talking about it. Like, are we even going to have, what is the dental practice going to look like in 20 years,
Well, and even it's yet another place where the binary conversation doesn't do any good. So you need to go into the middle and say, what's the cream and sugar? What are the weak, strong bundles? What's the X-ray? What is best automated? And what do I do around that I can't do now?
Right. Yeah. Love it.
That's the Stay Human story.
I love it. Artificiality Institute.
That's the one. Yeah.
I said that right? Okay.
Yes, you did.
All right. Well, I'll put all of the links to follow, and your website and your social media accounts in the description. I am really excited and enthusiastic about hopefully helping you get in to do some speaking events in the dental industry. Anybody watching who's a meeting planner that really wants a psychological approach to this issue and not just fluff and not just hype, I would encourage you to reach out to Helen. She's obviously a wealth of knowledge, and I think what you guys are doing is fantastic. So thank you very much for coming on. Appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much, Adrian. It's been a pleasure. Really enjoyed it.
Thanks for listening to Bite Size Podcast. Tune in to stay up to date with everything dental AI and tech